Hi guys, so welcome to the part 3 of why we visualize data. Now, you will find this video in the playlist for introduction to data visualization. Right. So next, we have looked at two reasons we've seen to understand patterns and trends. We have looked at to make complex data understandable. Now, the third is to identify outliers and anomalies. So the first thing we want to look at is the intuition. What is the intuition behind identifying outliers and anomalies? Now, sometimes, and before we talk about that, outliers are typically unusual data points. They almost always affect the overall analysis, and it's typical for actions, happenings in businesses, in life, health, to have unusual situations. These unusual situations make for outliers, and it's ideal to pick them out. However, looking at the data itself or the numbers does not change that. It does not show those outliers. So again, we're going to be looking at outliers. We're going to be looking at unusual situations, anomalies. Right, and we also look at how they affect the overall analysis. Now, we would have to look at an example. We have to look at an example. Now, to look at the example, we're going to do something pretty simple, right? We are going to generate random data, and then we'll create some anomalies, and then we'll visualize, right? Now, it's also interesting to understand that this video is just is an understanding, very, very basic understanding of visualization and why we want to identify outliers. So we have already imported this just to make it clear. And by the way, if you're watching this for the first time, please check out the first question and second questions. They are independent videos. So first I'm going to do is I'm going to use X here, and I'm going to use np.random.rand, and I'll use the Shift and Tab. Now you can see the documentation. This is a convenient function for users porting code from MATLAB. Yep. Create an array of given shape and populates it with random samples from a uniform distribution. So I'll put 50 here. I just, when I run this and we put X, you see what we have here. Right, we have 50 random from like a random samples. And then, again, I'll have Y, and we use np.random.rand, and again we have 50. Now we're going to introduce an outlier, so I'll call this outlier. Let me call this outlier underscore X, and in here we're just going to introduce something different. So if you look at the data we have here, we're simply going to look at something that will make up for an outlier. So let's just introduce, let's put this here. We have 0.95. Let's introduce this here. Then here we're going to have outlier, and we're going to call this Y, and we're going to also introduce a square bracket, which is a list, and then we have we'll put this 95. So Y is not defined. Why is y not defined? Oh, that's the error. Right. So next thing is we're going to plot the visuals, and so that's why we're answering the question. If you have watched the other two videos, you would notice that the first thing I'll do is to bring out the first tool for visualization. Here, I'll be using the scatter plot. Scatter plot typically shows relationships. So I am going to show the relationship between x and y. And I'm going to, in here, I'm going to create a label. And in here, I'll call the label data points. Next, I am also going to create a plt.scatter. And I'm going to have outlier x, outlier y. I'm going to introduce color, and I'll use red, and then label this. I'll label this outlier. Of course, we're going to have a title, so I'll use plt.title. I call this outlier detection. I'm going to introduce a legend here, so it's a plt.legend. Automatically checks out our legend, and then we have plt.show. So let me get rid of this. Then I colon this. Now you can look at this and you can see that we have outliers here. So typically we have the distribution of x and of course y-axis, and then we have an outlier. And you can see the outliers over here, and the rest of them are data points. And so you typically see that this is it. But now the whole idea is to show you that the red dot is clearly an outlier. But how do we know that the red dot is an outlier when we are working with real data? That's what visualization does, right? So take your time out, watch this again, and get the intuition. The intuition is to show you that data visualization makes for identifying outliers and anomalies.